The chaotic state of today's world can leave even the most well-balanced among us feeling anxious, depressed, and powerless. If you find yourself losing sleep or feeling constantly stressed and anxious by the upheaval that's occurring near and far, you've lots of company. Each day, we are reminded of significant concerns, including political turmoil, global warming, environmental disasters, wars, pollution, human rights issues, financial crises, skyrocketing mental health issues, and so much more. Could kindness and acts filled with mindful intention be one of the key solutions to creating the change our world so desperately needs? Today, we'll focus on this listener's real life question. I feel constantly on edge about global warming and the negative political environment. My partner and I both go down the rabbit hole of doom scrolling and we get overwhelmed by worrisome news stories. Our two kids seem to get more anxious by the day. What are your tips? And with that question as the focus of today's episode, I'm Dr. Carla Marie Manley, and this is Imperfect Love.
Welcome to Imperfect Love with Dr. Carla Marie Manley, psychologist, author, and relationship expert. I'm here to help unravel mysteries and misconceptions about love, relationships, and mental health issues, plus everything in between. Love is complicated, people are not perfect, and relationships surely can be tough. Together, we'll navigate this messy, imperfect space of real life.
Today, we are joined by a very special guest, Magali Limeta, who will be sharing her significant expertise in the areas of positive, proactive change and making a difference. Welcome to the podcast, Magali. It's such a joy to have you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Manley, for having me. It's an honor.
It's such a joy to have you. So before we launch into our discussion and getting to the roots of the listener's question, do you mind telling us a little bit about what makes you, you?
Oh, yes. So my name is Magali Limeta, and I'm a first-generation Mexican American. My parents migrated from Mexico in the late 80s and have really been a positive influence in my life. And from a very young age, they really taught us, me and my brothers, the idea of being kindness, of paying it forward, of being of service to others. And so through that, it's been kind of my North Star of being a service to others, being able to pay it forward to people who have helped me navigate the educational system as a first generation college student. So those are things that motivate me, right? And motivate me to help the next generation be better leaders for their communities, for our society, and for the world.
Thank you for that beautiful background. And your journey hasn't been easy. It's been step by step. Can you say a little bit more about some of the challenges you've encountered and how you've overcome them? The reason I'm asking this is because many of us who don't have, a good start in life, whether it's financially, education, whatever it is, feel like, oh, I can't overcome these hurdles. Yet you are someone who through great dedication, perseverance, and positivity, you've really made quite a beautiful journey. And I know it's going to continue to unfold. So if you don't mind sharing a bit about that journey with us.
Yes, Dr. Manley. So I, as a first generation Mexican American, I entered the educational system, right? My parents didn't speak English. So I was responsible for translating documents as a kid in kindergarten. I would translate the parent teacher conferences, right? And the very unique thing is that my parents are not college educated, but my father was very passionate about us having a college education. Like he knew it was he knew it was important because it was going to change my life, right? I don't know where this man learned this, right? Because he's not a college educated, but he was really smart in that aspect, right? So I knew I was going to go to college, but I just didn't know how. Right. I didn't know about SATs. I didn't know about AP courses that, now looking back, I was like, wow, like I didn't know a lot. Right. But it was like my community, it was teachers, it was people who said, hey, this is how you do this. Hey, you should get involved in this organization. Oh, have you thought about this? Right. And I'm just like, wow, these were my angels. These are the people that really helped me flourish. Right. And if it wasn't for them, right, like I still remember my chemistry teacher, Mark Neiman, and how he just was like, you can do this, you can do X, Y, and Z. And, I want to also, thank my health teacher freshman year, Miss Kessa Early, who was like, hey, you should be involved in this organization. And that organization basically recruited youth to come to the table with adults to discuss issues that are happening in the community and come up with solutions, right? So it was because of them that I was able to excel in high school. And this is, and then I was like, I think I was such a good student, right? Like I was getting good grades in high school. And then my senior year, I didn't have the requirements to go to college. Like in California, we have this thing called AG requirements, and there are a set of courses that you have to take in order to enroll into the CSU UC system. And I didn't have the requirements, but and I thought I was going to go to a 4 year. That was the plan. And somehow I didn't have the math requirements. So I ended up going to the JC. But I learned, right? I learned to ask the questions. I learned to advocate for myself. And here we are, and pretty much involved in things that help the next generation for it to be easier for them, right?
Absolutely beautiful. You said so many things that make me, listening to you, so proud of you, because it's not an easy journey, especially, first generation, and so many things to navigate, and you have done it. And so share a little bit about the work you do now, not just your 8 to 6 job, you've no 9 to 5 job, but also the work you do in community, because I know that you are and have become and will continue to be an angel for so many other people. And you brought up the concept of how people were angels in your life and how you believe in paying it forward. And so, and I know you continue to do this. It's one of the reasons I wanted you on the show, because you walk your talk. And that's so important, because that's, going back to the listener's question, which we'll keep looking at. It's about knowing that we can all make a change, even in little ways, but you're doing it in nice big ways. So talk a little bit, please, if you don't mind, about your work.
Yes. So I work in healthcare, right? And what I love about healthcare is you're always helping the patient that's sick, and you try to do your best to make sure that they feel comfortable when they come into the hospital or when they get their bill, right? A lot of families can't afford healthcare. So you try to basically find ways to make sure that they get the financial support they need. I sit on the board of Habitat for Humanity in the Bay Area, and basically advocate for families to be first time home buyers. The stories that you hear that parents not being able to afford, they never imagine of like buying a home in the Bay Area because it's expensive, and being able to like meet these families and their stories of how they're getting a Habitat home, right? And the unique part of Habitat is people actually help build their homes, and it's such like I just love that. The other thing that I do is I'm very passionate about community, serving my community. I ran for school board, and I ran unopposed, so didn't have an election. But I get to serve in the community that I grew up. And it's an honor. And I don't think a lot of people can say that. But for me, it's a full circle moment where I'm advocating for children's kids like me, right, who are first gens, don't understand the education system, and just try to be like a voice to be like, hey, this is what's happening. What are we doing about this? How can we work together with different community members, parents, the district, the system. So that's kind of like the main things that I've been focusing in the last couple of years.
You are amazing and so inspiring because you've gone from nothing into not only someone who has quite a lot going for her, but you are a force of good in the world. You're being one of the angels that the world so needs. So thank you. And thank you for the backstory. I know there's so much more to you than that, but let's go to the listener's question. So when we look at the state of the world, and so many people come to me saying how anxious they are about whether it's their finances, not having housing, not being able to get good education for themselves or their kids, or global warming, the pollution that is taking over our world, the wars, the political unrest. So there's a lot on our plates, physically, mentally, emotionally. What do you think? What is some sage advice that you would have for her listener who's saying, wait a minute, there's so much going on, and this individual is focusing, for this person, it is the negative news and the political unrest. And what would you say? What are some tips you might have for her?
Yes, there's a lot going on in the world right now, right? But one thing that, and your listener mentioned, or what the part of the question was, like they like to doom scroll. So my advice would be, because we need to take care of ourselves. We are the most important, the most important thing. Um, what I like to do is sometimes get off social media because it could be it's emotionally a lot, right? And you can get caught up easily on that. So I delete my social medias. Like there was for the month of December, I think I deleted it for 2 weeks, right? Because I needed a break. And what I did was every morning I would go for a walk, right? The time that I wasn't on my phone or reading the news or not, because I like to wake up and read the news, what's going on. And it's just like one bad news after the other. You're just like, I can't do this today. And go for a walk in the mornings and really be present, being like enjoying my walk, enjoying breathing the fresh air, and that really helps my emotional and mental state. It does wonders. So that's one piece of advice that I would give. Delete social media, try to spend like your time out in nature, right? And then the second thing is there's things that we can control. And Dr. Manley, that's us going to the polls and voting for elected leaders, for leaders that are gonna try to find solutions to what's happening locally, nationally, in the world. So read who's running for office, city council, school board, assembly members or senate, right? Are they going to do you think they're going to represent you? And like you can volunteer on their campaigns. An election is coming up. So I would encourage your listeners, those who are able to register if they haven't, and if they have, and you like an elected official or a candidate, I would encourage them to get involved. And that's how we come up with solutions, right? Like working together, electing people who reflect our values.
Those are such good points and so important that I want to go back to each one, if you don't mind. So, the first, getting off social media. It doesn't mean forever. You can do it for 2 weeks, you can do it for a month, you can do it forever. But if you're doing something that you realize is causing anxiety or depression, why do it? There are ways to consume news. I like saying to Alexa, Alexa, NPR news update. And I get the news update. And it's usually very easy to digest because I'm not getting graphic or sensationalized images from the TV, and I'm getting something that is pretty straightforward. And so it's not as triggering or as anxiety inducing as overly dramatic images that we might see either on social media or on TV. So I'm with you. We can put ourselves on a very mindful social media diet, news consumption diet. I'm also an advocate of not consuming news close to bedtime, or if you have kids in the house, not letting them around sensationalized images because the listener's kids are getting anxious. So it sounds to me as if her kids are absorbing the mom's anxiety, the partner's anxiety, and the anxiety in the world.
Yes.
So we have that one. The next one, which I'm segmenting into its own piece, is time for self-care, being able to slow down, even if you don't have time for a half-hour walk or an hour walk. I've got to have my morning walks like you. It's that's I need that in order for my wellness. And as you say, self-care is vital because if we don't have good care for ourselves, we're not able to show up for ourselves or the other people in our lives. So I'm with you on that piece. And time in nature, whether you live in a city or the country or somewhere in between, it can be a walk around the block. It doesn't have to be, it can be hugging a tree for a minute to feel that nice, strong energy. Who cares if somebody thinks you're nutty for hugging a tree? I don't care. So it makes sense. And I'm so glad that that's one of your go tos because it's free. We can access it generally no matter where we live, some fresh air. So I really appreciate that that's one of your go-tos. The next one where you were talking about voting, so important for us, not necessarily to vote along party lines. We're free to do that if we want, but to be really mindful about what does this candidate stand for? Do their values, as you said, having their values match what you're after? And the other piece is you can volunteer for a campaign. If you really believe in a certain candidate, get out there, volunteer if you have the time. The other piece that you put in there, or maybe you didn't put in there, but I'm putting in there, you can run for office. And that may seem too big and a little bit, I can't do that for people. But I noticed when I was doing a little bit of background research on who you are, that you used a certain forum when you ran. What was it called? I'm the one, it's like run for something or
Yeah, Run for Something is an organization.
yes,
Yes, there's
yes.
so many resources. So yes, thank you for saying that. Please run for office. Sometimes you might see a candidate that doesn't reflect your value, and you might be that person that your community needs.
So I can hear some of our listeners, even me, saying, I'm so busy. I have so many other tasks to do. Or other people might be saying, who would vote for me? I'm just a dad or a mom or a worker. And what would your response to be to that?
There are so many resources out there that are encouraging other new people coming up to run for office. So I would say research. And if you don't want to run for office because it's so busy, you're so busy, then encourage someone to run for office. I heard this crazy statistic that you have to ask a woman 7 times to run before she says yes, right? So plant the seed, right? Plant the seed. I think that when you see someone that that reflects your values, that has the leadership skills, encourage them because sometimes you can't be what you can't see. Right. When people asked me to run, I was like, no, right. For many reasons. But then I was like, oh, maybe I can't do this. Like, Oh, yeah. And then it becomes easier. Like, okay, I think I got this, right? Like I've been out in the community forever. I've done so many service projects. I've been in many roles. And it just becomes easier as you get into the arena.
Thank you for saying that, because for our listeners to hear that it was intimidating for you at first. And so that's a natural response when we take on a new role. But I love the idea of run for something, and I'll put that in the show notes, because if there's some part of you that's saying, I want to make a difference in my community, I'm sure there are positions that match up for someone who has 5 hours a week to give, 10 hours a week to give, 40 hours a week to give, whatever it is. So thank you for saying that. Another piece that I really want to bring out, and I'm sure you've done this. I know in our community, when there's such a homeless crisis in our community, and instead of griping about it or lamenting about it and feeling disempowered, I went to a county meeting and stood up with what ended up being droves of other people. They only gave us each, 60 seconds to speak or something goofy, but at least we all had a chance to have a voice, to feel empowered because we were doing something. And me being me, I created a script to read from and had all of these things to offer that were well researched. And I didn't have the opportunity to do any of that. But even in preparing it, I felt really sure of my viewpoint and felt as though now, if I want, I can take what I have written here and send it to the editor of a newspaper or something. So we can all do these little things that help channel that anxiety and stress into a positive direction. Instead of feeling that the world's happening to us, we become part of what's happening in the world. What do you think?
No, I agree with you. There are so many platforms where you can share your opinion. Something that I like to do when I am on social media is uplift other voices, right? Who's coming up with a solution, who's coming up with a good policy, who's coming up, I share that on my social media for my audience to, my followers to see, because sometimes you can lose hope. It's easy to lose hope, but I'm optimistic, right? Like I'm optimistic about the world. And yeah, I think I don't want to lose hope, right? I don't want to lose hope. I don't ever want to be that person. And if I ever do, I'm gonna come back to watch this podcast and listen to myself. But yes, I think we all have a platform, right? Whether it's talking to our leaders during open, forums, sending solutions, writing to our elected officials, or just getting involved in the community, right? Like I know a couple of days ago, the state of California, they do their like unhoused count, which, basically you get to go around in your community and understand how many unhoused people live in your community, so that way you can get federal dollars. And so there's just different ways to like volunteer and become part of the solution.
Thank you for bringing that up, because, again, going back to the listener's question where she's feeling anxious and really concerned with the state of the world, and if she can become part of the solution and her partner become part of the solution, invite the two kiddos to become part of the solution. And I'm thinking of this one, I think it might have been a poem that I saw. It was about starfish on the beach. And there were, thousands and thousands of starfish on the beach. And the person was picking them up and saying, and throwing them back so they didn't die, and throwing them back. And somebody came up and said, why are you doing that? There are so many starfish on this beach. You're never going to save them all. And the person said, I'm not going to focus on the ones I can't save. I'm going to focus on how many I can save. And that's hope. That's optimism. That is being a proactive servant in the world. And I think when we look, and a participant in the world, and I know I was recently traveling And I was so dismayed by the pollution in the country I was in, just so saddened by it. And my partner's used to me, no matter what beach I go to, no matter what street I go to, I'm picking up trash. I don't have gloves on. Yes, I should have gloves on, but I don't. And I'm just picking it up and finding a place to throw it away, a trash can. And my husband saw me practically crying because this gorgeous beach and more trash than my arms can hold. And he's not willing to hold it. I completely understand that. And so I'm picking up trash. And then I finally found a trash bin up at this one place and picked up more. Long story short, I realized that he said, you have to not be depressed about this. You can only do so much. And then I remembered that starfish poem about picking up what you can. And I think if we all do that, whether we're on a beach, on our city streets, on a walking path where, I pick up trash and happy to do so, but doing acts of service doesn't have to be trash picking up if that's not your thing. It can be opening a door for someone. It can being an angel and paying it forward by buying somebody a coffee or giving money to an unhoused person or a donation to Habitat for Humanity, running for political office. There are so many little acts of service that we can do. And instead of channeling our energy into, oh, the world's such a polluted place or global warming or this or that, it may be that your act of kindness for the day is walking to the grocery store instead of driving there if you only have a few things to pick up. It may be that your act of service is writing a letter to your congressperson. What do you think about those little acts of kindness, of service?
I'm a big fan of small kinds of uh, kindness. And thank you for bringing up, going to the grocery store, picking up garbage. For me, a big one is I went to the grocery store today. And what do I do every time I go to the grocery stores and I'm at the checkout line? I ask the employee, "How are you?" And they're just kind of like, they're they're a little confused, and they're like, "I'm really well. Thank you for asking. No one has asked me that ever before." And I'm just like, "Wait, what?" It goes a long way because it's saying that I am seeing you as a person. And that to me is like I'm making them feel important in that moment. Like in every interaction I have, I like to treat people as like they're the most important person right now because they are. In that moment, for me, they are. So it's important for me to like have a positive experience, asking them, "Tell me a little bit about yourself," right? So yes, I'm a big fan of those little small moments. Or, I was walking kind of like you, and I also like to pick up trash, right? Because if someone see me do that, they will start doing that. It's incredible, especially kids, right? So that's yeah, I think those little things go a long way.
Absolutely. And I love how you say, because these are things we can all do to really engage in kind ways with the people around us. And it's funny as you were using the example of, and I'm a little embarrassed to say this because I'm working on it. I'm not perfect, but I will often ask the person at the supermarket, "How are you doing?" But then I zone out and I don't pay attention to the answer. I'm doing it more of a nicety than being truly intentional with that
Mhm.
and listening to the response and engaging. And so it is making that person. So thank you for that. It reminds me to keep working on that when I ask someone, "How are you doing?" really paying attention to the answer so that that person feels really important in the moment. And you never know, like you said, what difference that will make in that person's day, that they may go home a little more uplifted and thus be nicer to their kiddo or their pet or their partner, or maybe if they're living alone, feel less isolated because they feel better and feel less hopeless about the state of the world.
Mhm.
Because it does have a big snowball effect, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. It does.
So, as though you have offered so many tips for this listener, but also for us in general, what else would you say are just a few other things people can do to feel less stressed and anxious and depressed about the world and more empowered, more hopeful, that little things they do, right? Choosing not to take a straw. I mean, that's a huge, it
Mm.
may seem small, but when we choose to say no thank you to the straw or no thank you to the plastic, you know, cap, on a coffee or whatever it is, those little things are making a big difference in the world, don't you think?
Yes, they do, right? Because they're not gonna end up in the sea, in the ocean, animals are not gonna get stuck. Yeah, I mean, just thinking about it just is yeah, just
It's tough to think
I
about. It's
yeah,
tough.
it's yeah, but I would also say that another form of self-care and for is journaling.
Mm.
Being able to put your thoughts on paper and being able to express yourself will reduce the anxiety. At least for me, that works, right? And I'm trying to make it a practice. That's kind of my one of my New Year's resolution because it does. It's like you're just writing everything, your emotion, you're feeling, and then being able to be like, oh, that felt so much better. Um, but yes, I think that you could just yeah, just yeah, I agree with you about the straw, not bringing I guess now you can bring your cup to the coffee shop now at Starbucks, Pete's,
I
and
didn't know that.
yes, I think that you can do that so that way you're reducing weight, not taking a plastic cup from the coffee shop. So I was excited about that. I was like, "Okay, great." Um
I'll have to do that and start taking a puppuccino cup with me for my dog's whipped cream because he loves that. So thank you. Thank you. See, we're already spreading
Yes.
good by spreading awareness.
Yes.
Isn't that so? I don't want to skip over your piece on journaling. I so agree with you that sometimes if we have a place just to, journaling doesn't have to be all meditative and ooh la la. It can be a place to what one of my clients one time called a vomit journal. And she
Mhm.
just used it to put in all the negativity. It felt like it was a safe, good place just to blurt it out. And I said, that's absolutely perfect. Just don't go back and read it because we don't want to go back into that negative. We want to seal it up, keep it away from our bed, and then just have a safe place where you can get rid of all of the issues that make you feel stressed, anxious, depressed. And then also, in concert with that, continue to take little steps in the world to make your community, your life a better place. And you're such a perfect example of that.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Manley.
So I have, well, you're so welcome. It's such a privilege to have you on the show. So, what do you think when it comes to our world as it is, aside from the environmental issues, the political issues. You talked about housing. One more topic I'd like to cover because you're such an expert in it is to realize that the medical system right now is very broken. And I remember one time I had years ago, there was a hospital issue and I had to pay it off. And I remember celebrating. It was this ginormous bill, at least was ginormous to me at the time. And I remember sending in my monthly payments until it was paid off and thinking, gosh, I wish I never encountered that ever again because it was such a struggle. So for people who don't have the financial wherewithal to have health insurance, or maybe they don't have the kind of government insurance that they wish they were able to access, what would be some thoughts on how they might be able to navigate that or make a difference in their community on that front?
Yes. So, I've been in healthcare for 11 years. In California, hospitals have to have a charity program, and they're able to apply for that if they can't, if they don't qualify for the Medi-Cal or Medicaid in their communities or in their state, excuse me. And there's a charity app, and if you qualified, sometimes they'll write off your bill, right? Just
Mm.
because you can't afford it, right? If someone is making $10,000 a year or $15,000, they can't pay a 200,000, 300,000.
No, no.
So there's that charity. That's when the charity application comes in. Um, so and I've worked for two healthcare systems, and I think we are very generous. And I think it makes a difference. It takes, you have to worry about the physical, your physical health, but then the financial aspect could bring anxiety, scared that you're not going to get the services you need because you can't afford to pay. And there's laws around this. If you go to an emergency room, they can't deny you services because you're not able to pay. That's not the case. So I think it makes people feel a little more comfortable when they know that there is a charity program, some type of financial support.
And so for someone who might not be aware of those things, maybe, Googling free free medical care in my community or programs for medical care, those sorts of things, would that be helpful?
Yeah, that would be how, it depends on the hospital, right? So you can Google the local hospital and see what their charity program, or learn more a little bit about their charity program. But I also want to make a plug here for community clinics, right? Community clinics are amazing because they offer some majority of the time they offer free services to people that can't afford health care. It's where they get their primary care. And I'm a big supporter of clinics. And so sometimes if you're able to, I would encourage your listeners to donate, to make a donation, because sometimes patients don't pay, right? Or their Medi-Cal, Medicaid, as it's known in other states, they accept those insurances.
Thank you. And you made me think just 2 days ago, there was someone I knew who couldn't afford medical care, and this person was having an eye issue that was really hurting. And I found, just Googled online. I knew there was a community clinic around that does really good work. And, she was able to get an appointment, no cost, nothing at all. And so we can remember that for ourselves and for other people, we can be those angels by Googling something for somebody or driving them there if they need a ride. Or when I went to the place's website, they take donations. They're looking for volunteers. And these are all ways, whether we might have medical care ourselves, but if we want to be a force of change in the world, we don't want to forget that there are all of these places where if we have a little bit of extra money, we can give money to support. If we have a little bit of extra time, we can give time to support, because we can all, and that's a piece that I'm glad we got to at the end of this, that volunteering and, many people volunteer around the holidays, soup kitchens, all of the different places that need help during the holidays, giving gifts to kids, all those sorts of things. But many of the places really need us all year long, not just during the holidays when we think about it, which is totally terrific and wonderful, but we can all channel our anxiety and our sense of being unempowered, disempowered by doing these small acts. They don't have to be huge. They don't, I know we try and ring the bell for the Salvation Army every year at Christmas. And one of my favorite parts of doing that is seeing moms or dads bring their little kids up, where they may be putting just a quarter in the bucket. They may be putting $1 in the bucket, but they're teaching that kiddo at age 3 that I can give to help others. And not that I'm plugging any particular charity, but Salvation Army, like Habitat for Humanity, they give almost everything back to the community, almost everything, which is not this, it's not the same for all charities. Some have a lot of money they use for the bureaucratic end of things rather than the doing good end of things. So thank you for bringing up that piece about volunteering, because we can all, no matter how busy we are, we can find something to do to make the world a better place.
Yes.
and you're doing it in spades. You are just such a powerhouse, and it's such a joy to connect with you. Are there any other tidbits you would like to share, Magali, before we wrap up?
Yes. One thing that I would like to say is, going back to what I said earlier, um, it takes one person, one situation to change the life of somebody. I wanna be able to encourage your listeners that when they see something in someone or someone needs some type of help or resource, to help them. It could be an email introduction to a student that wants to be a lawyer. Maybe in your friend circle, you have a lawyer, introduce them. Maybe they don't have information on how to get to college. Maybe you can, maybe you have kids that just recently graduated and you can offer some assistance in that way. But yeah, you know, let's spread kindness in this world. It's what we need right now.
Absolutely. And those are such beautiful parting words, because you're basically saying, hey, take the energy that is anxious and stressed, channel it into being somebody's angel. It doesn't have to be a huge way, just little ways. And if we all do that, we're taking our stress and our anxiety and we're channeling it into good. And it makes us feel better, because we can't feel anxious and stressed and joyful about what we're doing at the same time. The joy of doing good and being kind helps the stress and anxiety evaporate.
Yes.
And you do it, and I am just so thrilled that you've spent your energy with us, your time with us. So thank you, Magali. Where can our listeners find you or follow you?
Thank you, Dr. Mailey, for having me. It's an honor to be in your presence. Your followers you can find me on Instagram, Magali for Novato. I'm also on LinkedIn, Magali Limeta. If anyone is interested in learning about healthcare or getting jobs in healthcare, I'm more than happy to connect. But yeah, those are some of the ways that they can connect with me.
Okay, so on Instagram, it's Magali for FOR Novato, Novato. Did I?
Instead of the four, or
Uh-huh.
it's actually the number four,
Okay,
Magali for Novato.
Magali number 4 Novato, Novato. So now you know how to find our most wonderful Magali. Thank you again for your service, for your kindness, for your beautiful energy in the world. And thanks to our listeners. We so appreciate you and your energy. And this is Imperfect Love.
Thanks so much for sharing your time with me today. Remember, you have the power to transform your life and love fearlessly, if imperfectly, and it's my privilege to help you along the way. You can find more life-changing content, including my books and other podcast episodes, at drcarlamanley.com. Feel free to submit your own confidential questions through my website. I'll do my very best to include your issue on a future episode. If you found this podcast helpful, please subscribe and leave a review. Until we connect again, this is Dr. Carla Marie Manley wishing you oceans of blessings and love. Please note, this podcast is psychoeducational in nature and is not intended to replace formal mental health support. Please contact your healthcare provider or emergency hotline if you need psychiatric care. And as always, please take good care of your amazing, wonderful self.